Hi, this is my um, online reading quest, and for this, I'm going to be reading aloud an article on political parties because the 2016 election will be coming up in a few months, and I would want, if I was a social studies teacher, I would want my students to be educated even though they can't vote, but it's still important to know, like, how laws are made, why we vote for certain people. They should still have the information to be able to make their own decisions, even though they cannot vote, so they can get the word out to other people about who they support. Um, so this page is called Young Zine. Never heard of it, but I found it and it looked pretty credible because when I typed in Young Zine, a lot of the stuff came up and it was about great websites and for students and everything, so I trusted it. Um, so, U.S. Elections 2016, Origin of Political Parties, February 14th, 2016, by Heather Severance, guest editor. And on the side here, you can see that there are some advertisements that may be a little bit distracting to students. So, there, and the comments are a little distracting. Um, so I know there is an extension you could get on your computer called Readability that if my students were having trouble with the advertisements and it being a distraction, I would have them use that extension from Google Chrome to make it so it's just the text in an easier format to read. But I personally don't need that, so I'm just going to read it as is. Um, I don't know why these pictures aren't showing up, so I'm actually going to type in again, and let's see if it comes up if I type in political parties there. So let's see if the pictures look, and there we go. It's because I saved it on my computer before as a link, so that comes up. Um, so the article reads, we continue our 2016 election series with a look at how political parties originated in the U.S. It appears that political parties seem to be simply arguing over who is to blame and what should or shouldn't be done. The fighting has gotten so bad lately it seems no matter how big or small an issue Congress brings to the table, they seem to end up in a deadlock. At first glance, it appears that this clash of political parties is something new to the 21st century. So I understand that students, 6th, 7th, 8th graders would think that political parties fighting is something that hasn't gone on for a while. But as we all know after learning more about politics, that political parties have always clashed, and it's been hard to have elections since we first became a country. Um, so this is just trying to give a background of um, like how we blame everyone and the fighting so bad. And personally, I would like my students to read this text critically because, as you can see, it's not that long. And I know I learn better when I critically read a smaller text than efficiently read a larger text. I think I get more out of it then. So, as a teacher, in some cases, I would prefer to give my students smaller text so they would be able to dig deeper into the text and look more in depth at different things. And overall, I would just want my students to learn political parties and their history and relate it back to their lives today. Um, so, lessons from history. Let's look back to the 1780s when the founders of the United States were trying to figure out how to unite the country after the American Revolutionary War. It is eerie how similar the circumstances were then to today's. Then, the country was $50 million in debt, more than $600 million by today's standards, and individual states were reluctant to give up power to a union. So they didn't want to all become one. I would explain to them that I would probably go into a small history on the Revolutionary War. If they were confused, I would maybe pull up an article or a video about the American Revolutionary War for them to have some background on that. And maybe I would even find an article or do an activity about how in debt America was then. Um, Goes on to say Alexander Hamilton, one of the founding fathers, was the first to suggest that the newly formed Union should pick up the tab from the war. But the Jeffersonian Republicans, a group that believed in the freedom of states, criticized his plan. They claimed this would unfairly burden the nation's taxpayers and allow the wealthy creditors who helped fund the war get away without paying. So Alexander Hamilton, I would maybe give a short background on him to the students, talk about his presidency, um, and then Jefferson um, wanted the states to be more separate, and then Alexander Hamilton wanted it to be more together. And so they were arguing over taxpayer money basically and how to fund the war and how to get the wealthy people to be on board without technically paying the taxes. Um, Goes on to say, just as Democrats butt heads with Republicans over who to tax and who should pay down the nation's debt today, the Federalists and Jeffersonian Republicans were fighting the same issues in 1790. Excuse me. Um, so this is just stating that this has continuously been an issue from 1780, 1790s, and then I'm predicting that it will go on to say throughout time. Especially tax paying issues are definitely a large topic. Um, the power of the pen. As a result of all the infighting, several of the nation's founders turned to pen and ink to express their frustrations with political parties. Hamilton was extremely colorful in expressing his disgust of political parties. It is impossible to read the history of the petty republics of Greece and Italy without feeling sensations of horror and disgust at the distractions with which they were continually agitated, wrote Hamilton in the Federalist Papers. So you can even see from this map right here that the territories were divided and Democratic, Republican states were very diverse throughout what was the country then. So when they say they turn to pen and ink, I would predict, I would do more research on this, that they were writing books or pieces about the political parties and how corrupt they'd become since even not that long before the country was founded. George Washington also voiced his concerns about the dangers of political parties in his 1796 farewell address, warning citizens of the jealousies and animosity that divisions created. So I definitely agree with this. I think political parties totally divide our country, and I think sometimes people take it too far and don't respect other people's political opinions when that isn't the point of America. The point of America is to have free speech and to be able to believe in what you want. So I think the warning definitely needed, but I don't think anyone took it seriously, clearly. Goes on to say, perhaps the most thoughtful writer of the bunch, though, was James Madison, the primary author of the United States Constitution and the nation's fourth president. He recognized that it was human nature to split into factions. He stated that it was impossible to prevent political parties from forming in a free society, or else it wouldn't be free. I would let my students make their own opinion on this, of course, but my opinion is that it really can't, like, having political parties, yes, that's a freedom, like, you have the right to make political parties and to be divided, but I think to where we are today, I don't know if it was like this then, to where people are criticizing people's points of view way too often, that it kind of defeats the purpose of being able to pick your own side. And so the last paragraph says, instead, Madison argued that the solution was to limit the influence political parties could have on the government. Thus, he argued for the creation of a republic where citizens vote an official into office to speak for them. This was the beginning of the multi-party system in the United States. Okay, so that kind of answers my concern about that. So to limit their powers, to let it be more people's opinions. And I saw this picture. So that's just like a classic kind of ad campaign, it seems to me. And then obviously the Republican Democratic signs. But it's interesting that this is an ad because obviously no TVs, no pictures, anything. So that seems to me to be an ad. Um, but like now with TV and commercials and and radio shows, like it's become a whole nother level of campaigning and trying to get your party to win, and it's definitely become more corrupt than in the 1700s, I would say. But um, I think the challenge that this might pose for my students would be some of the vocabulary and background information on um, political parties and congressional power. So I would kind of dissect this information for them to let them get a better understanding of political parties and what exactly this is talking about. So, like, I took it when I read it paragraph by paragraph. I would definitely do that with them. So, do you have any questions? These are some of the words that are hard. Like, for instance, I would say infighting. What does that mean? Um, Agitated. They might not know what that means. I would have them maybe make a vocabulary list while they're reading to write down the words they don't understand and then try to use the context to figure out what those words mean. And definitely just give some background on the history of the Revolutionary War and what each political party stands for. And um, I don't know if I would go as far as like having a debate with them, depending on the grade. If it was eighth grade, maybe sixth grade, probably not, because they're probably not mature enough to respect each other's opinions. But I definitely think students should be informed on the election process and political parties so they can be educated citizens. A lot of people in college don't even know like why they're voting for who or what's going on with the elections. So this will just only help them for their future knowledge, and that's why I just want them to learn it. And I think this site emphasized it perfectly for um, a grade level. I would probably say this would be seventh or eighth. I don't know if I would give this to sixth, because there's some words that are pretty difficult, but and depending on the level of students, it would be depending on what school I'm at. School with if I was teaching in class with maybe a lower level of students, I probably wouldn't give this. This is for a pretty um, high advanced group, maybe not even that advanced, but more like even average. Just I wouldn't give it to students who I don't think could comprehend all the information that it's giving, and I would probably find um, a more easily read article. But I definitely think that um, integrating technology would be helpful to them even. I know there's a lot of apps about like political parties and like social studies apps on like phones and iPads, so that would definitely be something I would want to incorporate into it. Um, and I think that's all I have to say about that. But definitely just looking at online articles and like dissecting them, even saying aloud to myself, definitely helps a lot with me understanding so I know that it would help my students with it. So thank you.